Could I ask everyone to take a seat? We'll go ahead and get this meeting started on time. Okay. All right, let's go ahead, and I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Destin City Council to order, March 4th, 2019. Unfortunately, we don't have a member of our faith-based community here, so if everyone will stand, we'll just give a moment of silence, and Mr. Overdeer will lead us in the pledge. And about half our city staff is sick today, so let's say an extra special prayer for them in your moment of silence. Thank you. Mr. Overdeer.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me as we salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. First item is agenda approval. Does any council member have any changes, or will we just, if there are no changes, I'd like a motion. I got a motion, Mr.
Second.
Braden. Got a second? Hold on one second. We got arm waving by our city attorney. All right, so I have a motion to approve the agenda, and I have a second. All in favor? Vote is unanimous, so moved. Item number 1, approval of the minutes of January 7th, 2019, regular city council meeting.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second. I have a motion, I have a second. Any comments concerning this? Seeing none. Unanimous, so moved. First thing tonight, a special presentation. We have 3 of them. And the first one is our fiscal year 2018 audit and presentation by Joseph Clement, CPA. Mr. Clement, would you like to come up? Just hit the red button there. Okay, you're online.
Sorry. Okay. Good evening, everyone. The city remains in strong financial position for the year ended September 30, 2018, and its financial department, headed by Bragg Farmer, is most capable of keeping the city's financially responsible in both financial reporting and internal controls. We have one recommendation. It's a continuing recommendation. We recommend that the city adopt a formal fund balance policy. You have an informal policy that's in your footnotes to the financial statements on page 28, but we're looking to, it's a good recommendation, best practices to have a formal fund balance policy to allow future city councils to, follow a prudent man type of thing, keeping fund balance at a steady level. It's a real good policy to have, especially in your general fund. So, the financial statements and audit reports, we review with management. They looked at the drafts, they approved the drafts. We are issuing finals today that are dated, our audit reports will be dated today, March 4th, 2019. Our opinions are unqualified, clean, unmodified opinions on your financial statements. They are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and Florida statutes. We noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls over financial reporting or compliance with certain laws, provisions, grants, those type of things that would require a material adjustment to your financial statements. A federal single audit was not required as last year because you didn't reach the threshold of $750,000 in federal funds. Again, management was a pleasure to work with. Everything we asked for, an entire city that we worked with were very, very helpful and responsive. At the citywide full accrual level, as if you were a business, you have almost $110 million in net position. Very, very healthy because you have very little debt and your retirement programs are fully funded. At the general fund level, where you're really concerned, you had an increase in your general fund balance of $2.9 million for the fiscal year ended 9/30/2018. The total general fund balance was $22.8 million, very, very healthy. There's a chart below on here regarding what you have available and how you manage your fund balance. You have non-spendable fund balance, which is basically advanced to another fund. You won't be able to spend that until the other fund pays you, and it's in a deficit position until right now. The restricted fund balances are for your park, traffic, police, library, multimodal transportations. It's up $503,000 from the prior year, up almost $2.5 million. Your committed fund balance, it's over $9.6 million on your various projects you have going there. Your assigned fund balance is really carryover encumbrances to the next year of $1.3 million, and your unassigned fund balance is up $3.2 million, up almost $7 million, and that's a very, very healthy sign. So just wanted to let you know that, again, the city remains fiscally responsible and in solid financial position. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I have a question.
Ms. Ramsell.
The unassigned fund balance of $6.9 million, is that, I mean, obviously it's a high good number, but should we look at better ways of dispersing that, or should it be that high? What are your thoughts? I'm obviously not an accountant, so.
It depends on where you are. New York State has an assigned fund balance law for school districts that only allow 4% of your next year's budget. You're at 55%. So, I mean, that's why a fund balance policy is something important. This is what you really want to manage with your fund balance policy is your unassigned fund balance. That $6.9 billion is 55% of your total expenditures. Yep. Yes. It's in your budget process is how you would manage your fund balance. So future budgets, you have a lot of projects going on right now. Some did not happen last year, although they were budgeted, and that's why you had an increase in the in your unassigned fund balance.
Thank you, and I guess I can actually discuss with Bragg at another time or whatever the proper place is. Does that essentially mean then that we have some funds to maybe tackle some projects that need to be tackled? And we can talk about it another time rather than get into it here if that's appropriate.
You know, at the time to talk about it probably would be in another month or so when we do our visioning session. That would be an appropriate time for us to discuss how to deal with the additional funds that we have acquired this year.
Great, thank you all.
You brought up an issue that you had one recommendation that we're not doing. Could you explain that just a little bit more?
Well, it's a best practice, okay, type of thing. I've seen it in other financial statements where right in your financial statements it kind of describes what your fund balance policy is, such as our unassigned fund balance will never be below 15% of next year's expenditures. So we're recommending that the council consider doing something along those lines, and it's appropriate right now because Dr. Preble brought it up, and so I'm thinking that when, as Brad mentioned, next time you're into this, your financial budgeting process, that's where you would look at it.
All right, thank you. Any further questions from any other council
I
member?
have one brief one.
Go ahead, Mr. Destin.
Mr. Klimick, you said a formal fund balance policy is a good thing to adopt. We have an informal one right now that's in footnotes. Can you remind me what that states?
It basically says how you're going to spend your fund balance, what comes first. Mm-hmm. And it's your restricted would come first, and then you're committed, and then you're unassigned. That's what it says in your fund balance policy on page 28 of the footnotes.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's 3 categories, correct?
Right.
In that footnote. Bragg, I guess that's something that we'll tackle at the appropriate time.
Actually, it's something that I've already began work on, and that'll come forward to you as a resolution sometime in the near future.
So what happened back in about 7 years ago, GASB came up with statement number 54, which all governments had to enact in their financial statements. So just throwing a fund, how we're going to spend our fund balance. And so it's been in your footnotes because of the GASB 54, but it has never been in like a formal board resolution.
Any further questions? All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Okay.
Job well done.
Thanks.
Okay, now,
I think there's a
I'll
motion.
make
right, we have to do a motion here.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Go ahead.
I move that the city council accept, I move that the council accept the fiscal year 2018 audit.
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved. All right, tonight our second presentation is an update on the Mid-Bay Bridge repair and other issues concerning the Mid-Bay Bridge. Jimmy Nelson, would you like to introduce our guest? State your name, sir, and where you live. Button.
Mayor Jarvis, ladies and gentlemen of the Destin City Council, I am Jimmy Nielsen, and I'm a member of the Mid-Bay Bridge Authority, and have with me tonight Mr. Van Fuller, our Executive Director, and we thank you for inviting us to give you a report on the bridge, what happened on January 8th for the closing, where we are today, and where we're going. As I said at the County Commission meeting, just always keep in mind that safety prevails. We never want to put with this bridge or anything any of us do to put our citizens in harm's way. So that took a lot of effort, and it was a tough deal, but we got through it. We're getting through it, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Van Fuller, our Executive Director, that will give you a dog and pony show.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. I don't know which one of us is the dog and which one of us is the pony. But, Mr. Mayor, if I may approach you, I'd like to just give you this visual aid. So to kind of cover what happened, I kind of want to give you a little bit of information about the way the bridge is constructed, and then a little chronology of what happened in the sequence of events that started back in October and culminated on the 8th of January, and then tell you what's happened since then and where we're at. Please, at the end, I'm open to questions. I'll be glad to take questions along the way, and if I'm not, if there's anything you want to talk to, I'll be glad to address it as best I can. So first, I'd like to mention that the Mid-Bay Bridge is a segmental bridge, and many of y'all who were here when it was built in the late 80s, early 90s know that where Legendary Marine is and where Lulu's is now was the cast yard for all the segments that went into building the bridge. So if they put in the piers,
all these box segments that kind of look like a riding surface that you see there, and it's got a box on the bottom. Shallow, it's hollow in the middle. So you can enter the bridge from underneath. You can walk inside the bridge all the way across the bay. Those segments are tied together, 7 segments per span between piers. And between those piers, those 7 segments are tied together with 6 tendons, and that's an example of a tendon right there. Tendon is, I think, 7 strands per cable, 19 cables that are put in tension. They run between the diaphragm on one end of a segment, down through a couple deviation blocks back to another diaphragm. They're put in tension. They're encased inside a high-density polyethylene duct, and then once they're in tension, they're filled with grout to protect them from the elements, and then they're capped and they're covered and sealed on the outside. So those put that span between piers and compression, makes it operate and carries traffic. Put 6 of those spans together, and you got to put an expansion joint on either side just for the movement of the concrete and with temperature and the elements. And so between those end spans are called exterior spans, because at an expansion joint there's no mutual benefit with the way the tendons are tied together. In an internal span, they cross over and provide support to each other. On an external span, they terminate, and so it's able to move and allows that expansion and contraction to take place. So the stresses and the structural things is a little bit more important there at that exterior span where it's open and not connected. Interior, where you have mutual support, it's not, you get a little benefit from each span, supports each other. Okay. There's 912 of those tendons in the bridge, and right now there's, back in October of last year when we were doing inspections of the bridge, the DOT in their inspection discovered 3 tendons that they discovered that were degraded. Generally, that inspection process is it's like when you go to a doctor or something, but they sound the tendons first. When they hit with a mallet on the tendon, it'll have a certain sound to it if the grout's good and everything's fine, and it'll have a different sound if it's not. And that's step 1. Subsequent testing can include vibration testing, where they put some sound waves into the tendon and they measure how it comes out on the other side, and they can tell if there's any deterioration inside. And then there's some magnaflux testing where they can do some other kind of waves, some stuff that as I'm reporting to you the news and not the technical expert, I can't really speak to the technical side of it. But I can tell you, as you find something, you go another step further to determine what's going on. So at that point in time, back in October, they found a couple tendons that they had issues with that they felt like needed to be addressed further, and they put a load limit on the bridge to permitted loads. So that means tractor-trailer loads that are carrying normal overcapacity loads, they prohibited that from going over the bridge. So it was really not too much an impact for us across the bridge and here in Destin. They started on the work plan to work that and to fix that. And this little thing came up called Hurricane Michael, which prevented them from doing that. A little bit higher priorities within the district in Bay County and so forth. And so after they addressed that, back we come into December now, we coordinated with them, and they came over and we were working on the work plan on how we're going to do this repair effort. Part of that process we talked about was, okay, so we're going to get it repaired, but what are we going to do in the future to ensure that something like this doesn't happen again? Because it really is an inconvenience to the traveling public, and it affects commerce, and it affects a lot of other things with what happened with the closure of the bridge. Excuse me, this is prior to closure of the bridge. So what we came up with, let's go out and take some advanced testing. We've already found a few tendons. Let's go out and do some additional testing. And then they set a plan with us to do 100% testing of all the tendons in the bridge. So we were going to go out, and they were going out to start that afternoon, that advanced testing. This was the 8th of January. They go out, and when they were doing the testing, they found a second tendon that was deteriorated in one of the external spans. So this is the span with the expansion joint. So previously it had one tendon that was deteriorated to some extent. They found a second one. based on the load calculations, that's why the decision was made to close the bridge. 8 tendons out of 192 in the bridge that are good, and all of a sudden we got 2 in one span, exterior span. We've got an issue, and with an abundance of safety for the traveling public, let's close the bridge. Immediately thereafter, notification calls were made to make sure that emergency services and that the county and the authority knew, and then we tracked with communication throughout the process. I think we had some calls from y'all and got y'all on the distribution list to make sure y'all got updates as well. In that time frame, that 8 days between the bridge was closed, there were some reinforcing bars that were brought in. So bars that the bridge is outfitted inside to be able to provide some additional reinforcement in the event it ever needed it. And so there are ducts already in place for that. So it was really a logistical feat between getting these reinforcing bars from Chicago transported down to get them loaded up on barge, to get them barged out to the bridge, to get them all loaded up inside the bridge, and then to make sure that they were put together, put in the duct, and then stressed. And all that was done during a time frame of a lot of stuff going on in the district with multiple things. And you had at least personnel from 3 different districts within the state that were inside the bridge, working 24 hours a day, getting all this material loaded up and those bars put in so the contractor could attach them together and stress them, and then we got the bridge back open to limited traffic. So today the bridge is open to 2-axle traffic, and that traffic can be also carry a single-axle trailer. Okay, so that's the load limitation today, and that'll be the load limitation until the repairs are completed. So the permanent repairs are fixing to commence. Materials and mobilization has happened. The customer or you driving across the bridge or bay will not see it because everything's happening from underneath and inside the bridge. The first tendon and the span that had 2 tendons that were deteriorated will start to be replaced this week. And when these are done, they actually go in. There's one dude that can be inside the bridge at a time. He's actually saw cutting that bad tendon, and it will end up failing and breaking and rebounding inside the bridge. So for safety purposes, only one person's allowed inside the bridge. And then during that particular time period, you don't want to be that guy. In that particular time period, that's when the bridge will be closed. So they'll start that operation Wednesday evening at 11 p.m., and it should be completed by 2 a.m. Ideally, the best time to do any work on the bridge where you've got to close it that impacts the least amount of traffic is between midnight and about 4 a.m. There's anywhere between 20 and 30 cars an hour during that time frame. The DOT is starting a little bit earlier since this is the first time they're doing it, and they want to err on the side of caution, so start a little bit earlier so they don't, in case something goes wrong, they don't want to bump up against the morning commute. So that's why it's being done that way. Once that tendon is detensioned or cut, they will work to remove it, clean up the duct, replace the duct. There's a lot of cleanup to go around, and they anticipate that time frame to last anywhere between 2 and 5 weeks before they retension the tendon and get the new one installed. They've afforded the contractor within the contract 5 weeks per tendon replacement. They do feel that it'll be a little bit faster than that, but they do want to underpromise and overdeliver, as we all like to do when we do work. So that would put the end of the contract period toward the end of September.
And just for a reminder, how many tendons have they decided they're going to replace?
8 tendons. Which is less than, out of 912, I think, tendons in the bridge, that's less than 1% of the tendons in the bridge. 8. 8 out of 910. Excuse me, 912. And that concludes my presentation, subject to your questions, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Any further questions, folks? Rodney, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious as how the bridge got in that bad a shape to warrant shutting it down, and what's being done to hopefully prevent it in the future.
So the DOT structures engineer, described what happened as the perfect storm, if you will, when she spoke to the authority. That we had two issues with two tendons in one span. As early as the mid-2000s, less than, gosh, I forget, it's an infinitesimal percentage. It's like, matter of fact, let me look here. I've got, of the 250,000 grouted tendons and segmental bridges in the United States, and this is early, like about 2005, 15 total had this experience. So it's not a prevalent thing across bridges that span salt water or other bodies of water or in the mountains or anything like that. It's not a prevalent thing, but it just so happened it happened with us. So there's a number of things that are going on and a number of causes of it. I don't want to speak for the DOT, but generally speaking, as I understand it, the construction procedures at the time our bridge was constructed were were not what they are today, and some of the weakest link in that process were the skills and the labor that were doing that grouting operation. So that's been upgraded, and the codes have been changed since that time. There's new grout that's out, and in terms of material technology, and then some of the way they do that has changed as well. And the building codes, and construction codes, and design codes have been updated as well. So it's not happening again in the future. With respect to our existing bridge, because we have what we have, the DOT is scheduled, and we're working in concert with them from the authority perspective. Additional inspections, 100% inspection, and vibration testing of all the tendons in the bridge to make sure we got a good baseline, and then a random sampling of those, increased random sampling yearly, and then we're working to make sure we do an additional inspection. The authority does an additional inspection in addition to what the DOT does, and we're working to get those out of sync so that we double up and really get more looks on that so that we identify things if anything else occurs in the future.
Thank you so much. That's all I've got,
Hopefully that
Mayor.
addresses.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for coming and
Yes, ma'am.
keying us in on all the information. So I guess my question sort of builds on what Councilman Braden said, and I'm just wondering, what is the typical lifespan of such tendons? And if we're under or below that, can you explain why?
So that was a question that our authority asked of the bridge structures engineer when she came to brief us as well. And so the bridge lifespan is 75 years and the tendon lifespan is 75 years. But anything mechanical, anything that's out in the elements, whether it's your vehicle, your air conditioner, or otherwise, is subject to life cycle repairs as well.
So then I guess the question is, knowing it's being built above seawater essentially and subject to corrosion, why, when it was built, was there not extra coating or whatever the typical solution would be to help ensure
Yes,
it
ma'am.
would reach at least, a
Yes, ma'am.
significant portion of its
Yes, ma'am.
lifespan?
Do y'all have, where's that visual aid I gave y'all? So like I mentioned earlier, so there's your tendons, there's your steel that's put in tension. So what protection is on it is, this is a high-density polyethylene coating. Inside, once it's in tension, it's filled with this grout. So that grout is like concrete around these things. That's what's protecting it. And then there's a cap put on it, and this is covered with another protective surface. So yes, ma'am, that is and has been done.
And I don't mean to harp on this, but if the lifespan's 75 and we've only done 25, 30, is there something that should have been done or could have been done to ensure that it actually reached
No,
its
ma'am.
lifespan?
Once again, I'll defer to the DOT, but what they mentioned to us was that the codes and the construction practices are different today. If you look at this with 8 tendons out of 912, it really is not a highly significant thing.
Well, it was significant enough to close the
Well, I
bridge,
mean,
right?
I'm talking
Yeah.
statistically. I'm not talking otherwise.
Yeah.
But it's statistically, and it was designed to be able to make these repairs while traffic was still going over the bridge. The perfect storm was the two in that exterior span that came at the same time.
So obviously this was found at first with the random inspection, and then you did a more thorough inspection. How often are these random inspections going to be staged so that we can ensure a closure of this length and type is avoided?
So National Bridge Inspection Standards are, the bridges are inspected every 2 years. So what happens is they do a detailed inspection on different cycles. So you've got superstructure, foundation, substructure, interior reinforcing. By National Bridge Inspection Standards are required every 2 years. The authority has worked with the DOT to get off sync so that we do one year and the DOT does another, so we're getting one every year. And then the off years, they do a walkthrough inspection to see if anything's changed since the detailed inspection. So there isn't a random sampling process other than what the DOT is going to do as an additional inspection regime is to do vibration testing on a certain sample of the tendons every year.
So when was the last inspection before you discovered this issue, right before Hurricane Michael?
2017.
And there was no sign of deterioration
Correct.
at that time?
Correct.
So that quickly it can go to an almost failure, close the bridge state?
But in this particular case, it did.
I guess I'm just trying to find some answers, and I mean, obviously y'all can imagine all the emails and things we've heard, and y'all are in the same exact boat, I'm
Yes,
sure.
ma'am.
But what could be done to try to prevent something like this, sort of a closure? I mean, I know you were talking about staggering the inspections and such, but is there any particular of extra reinforcement besides the support poles that you were talking about?
Well, we have the additional reinforcement that we put in on the spans that are affected. The DOT did. When the existing spans get repaired, that additional those reinforcing bars will be removed, and they'll remain inside the bridge and protected in the event that anything ever happens again. They'll be able to install them real quickly and then address any replacement.
Great. And I guess my last question then would be, there's a lot of questions about, are they going to raise the tolls now to help pay for all this repair and such? Can you address that?
Yes, ma'am. I'll defer to my board members who control that. I don't, but there is no intent to raise the tolls, and there should be no requirement to raise the tolls because of this situation. So we have a unique arrangement with the Florida Department of Transportation, intergovernmental agreement that basically is they will operate and maintain the bridge on our behalf, and then they will subordinate our payment of those costs to debt service. So that'll come after debt service. So much like, I don't know how much debt y'all have issued in the city, but so we issue debt and we've got to pay that off, and we've got to collect a certain amount of tolls to pay that debt. In a standard calculation, you have to pay for operations and maintenance before you pay the debt, right? So this allows us to keep tolls about $1 lower a transaction because the DOT is taking care of our bridge for us. It's kind of a difficult arithmetic deal, but it really it behooves us. So bottom line is, they're going to pay to repair the bridge, and then the authority will repay the DOT when the authority has the funds to be able to do that.
Right. And are you at all concerned about losing the tolls that normally those vehicles greater than one axle would generate?
Certainly.
Yeah.
We have those vehicles probably represent somewhere between 1-2% of the total traffic, which isn't much, but about 6% of the revenue. Fortunately, the DOT has allowed the 2-axle vehicles carrying single-axle trailers, and that our estimate is somewhere probably between 65 and 75% of the multi-axle traffic is that traffic, so that should recoup a lot of that. But yes, ma'am, certainly it's going to have an effect.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank staff because I asked for you to come, so I want to thank staff for jumping on it so fast,
Yes,
and thank
sir.
you for coming.
Yes, sir.
I have a series of questions. Dr. Ramswell asked some of them, but just for historical purposes, previously, wasn't the bridge closed years past for something similar?
Yes, sir. Early 2000s.
And similar situation?
Similar. I don't know if the DOT hasn't determined if it's the same cause or not.
Okay. I know you talked about the bridge being inspected and you discussed the different
Yes, sir.
ways it's inspected. The tendons that broke, okay, that are damaged, in that previous inspection, the one you just had, were they inspected prior to finding the damage? In the last inspection, was that
Oh,
included?
yes, sir. Yes, sir, they were.
Okay. What about the other 904 attendants? Okay, obviously, if 2 went, the other ones are just at risk. So would that necessitate a more advanced inspection than you already discussed?
Like I mentioned, they're going to go out and do full 100% of the tendons vibration testing on them. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, let me just look at something else. The closure, obviously, depending on how this goes as far as the timing, I know you discussed it's going to be at night.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, when you replace the other ones, a similar closing will take place.
Yes, sir. So you could anticipate 16 nighttime closures to replace 8 tendons.
Right.
One to detention and then one to retention the
Right.
tendon. Yes, sir.
I'm sure you have this in place, but just thinking out loud, obviously, everybody's gotten the word, FDOT's put it out.
Yes,
the
sir.
city's put it out that to close, so obviously the public will know that. But
You know, I think y'all probably found out as well in the city, but as much information as you put out there, sometimes you just don't get everybody.
yeah, but this is at least days ahead of time
Yes, sir.
compared to that. The question I have is, if sadly, if something goes wrong, do you all have a mechanism in place to get the word out as fast as you can?
Certainly. I mean, generally, it'll go straight to, between the DOT and us, it'll go straight to media outlets and the Emergency Operations
Right.
Center and the municipalities on either side, yes.
Okay. And as far as, I know you talked about the rate increase would be due to, somebody else, not you. I realize that, okay? If it was a rate increase to cover the cost.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any guesstimate as to what the total debt's going to be for this?
The cost of the repair is
Right.
probably on the north side of $4.5 million. But probably south, somewhere probably maybe south of $5 million for the repair. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's it for right
So generally, it's something that DOT will pay. We have a flow of funds at the end of year with whatever monies are left over from debt service, operations and maintenance, admin expenses. The little bit of funds that are left over at the end of the year are split between the DOT and us if there's any debt with the DOT.
Right.
That's the way we would generally look to repay it, although the authority's chosen of late to try to pay as they go as much as possible and as much as they're available to.
And folks, this is basically getting an update on what's going on with the bridge, rates and fees and all that kind of stuff's not in his department in the first
Understand.
place, so.
Just one last question, if you would, and thank you. I realize you said it was 75 years that the bridge was guaranteed. and,
Design life?
Moving forward with this, God forbid if these things go out again.
Yes.
Are they warranted? I know that sounds like a silly question, but
so-
so those expenses don't occur again if they
no,
do
sir,
go out?
no. We're well past the warranty.
No, I'm talking about the new ones.
Oh, certainly, yes. Sir.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So the new ones will be the new code, installed with that with the new grouting materials and the new installation procedure. So they will be, they should be sterling and silver.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Menzel. Mr. Marler.
Just one quick one. Okay, so you're going to detention, basically cut the cable.
Yes, sir.
What's that, and then you're going to, then that's it for until you go back and redo it again.
Yes, sir.
So is there any safety issues that we should worry about with that? Because you're going to take
No,
the
sir,
tension off
just
of the second.
based on the load ratings that the department has done, and when they put that extra reinforcing in there, that's what's accounting for. It's providing additional reinforcing while they take that second one down. In the sections with the single tendon that's out, it's not as important. So you've got extra reinforcement in those sections with one tendon out right now, so it could carry the capacity, but it's the weakest spans that the load limits are put on, not the ones that are a little bit stronger.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. I appreciate your time and explanation. I was there for the commission meeting when you did it, and
Yes, sir.
I really felt that this was going to be edifying, not only for our council members, but the public that watched this as all.
So we really appreciate the opportunity to come out, and if you ever, we'll be glad to come at the drop of a hat at any time y'all need us.
Okay. We'll probably have some questions about the rates and stuff like that when that all comes about, and we'll invite you. You may not want to come, but we'll invite you.
No, sir, I'll be glad to come anytime.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Up next, we have a presentation by a good friend of ours, Mr. Alan French. Would you like to come up to the podium?
I'm Alan French, 50 Lands End Drive. Tonight I'm representing local nonprofit Trees on the Coast. And I am so excited to be here, y'all. Our little organization is really fired up about this project I'm going to present because, number one, it's positive, it's good, it's beautiful. I can't imagine it being controversial. And your decision on this, I have dubbed in my head when I was showering today, the biggest no-brainer in the history of Earth. So, just as a backdrop, you probably all are aware of Trees on the Coast, but for anybody that isn't, we're a local nonprofit helping the environment and trying to beautify our community. Since our inception 4 years ago, we have donated and planted over 400 trees. And just to let you know what that means for the city and the taxpayers, is we have saved the city and the taxpayers way over $100,000, probably closing in on $200,000. So I think we're doing a good thing, and we're so happy to do it. I'm not going to go over all of these projects we've done. I even forgot a couple, but so what's next for us? This is what our next project that we're proposing, and it's the Welcome to Destin sign. Everybody can see the picture there. The sign is, I think it's one of the prettiest signs there is, but if you look at this picture, there's weeds and dirt and sand just kind of strewn about it. So that's why we came up with this idea to do this project. And why should we do this? Well, like I just said, it's one of the most beautiful signs on earth. Presently, it's surrounded by weeds and dirt, which I've already said. And I've always said that you only get one chance at a first impression, and this is one of the main first impressions for our city. One of our tech-savvy board members somehow Googled this, so I'm not going to claim it's absolutely accurate, but he said there's been at least 350,000 photo ops at this sign, which you all know what happens when people do a photo op. They put it on social media, which translates into millions of views of this sign. So the people that aren't even here, the people in Michigan, see our sign and think, wow, that's a pretty cool place. So I think that also translates into absolutely free advertising for our city. And we think it should be beautifully landscaped, over the top. And when people see it, people go, wow, then Destin must be a really special place. And it's our front door, like I said, so we think we should be proud of this sign. So here is today and what we are proposing on the right side. That one. What we were trying to do was frame the sign with greenery. The way we have these trees positioned behind, they're Washingtonia palms, they're cold hardy, and we can get them really, really tall, which we need for this sign. You see these, if you're wondering where they're located in Destin now, they're at the Destin Commons by that outdoor place. What's it called? The Bass Pro Shop, yeah. They're up, kind of up really high, and they're by some of the banks around here. There is cold hardy pendo palms to kind of fill in the gaps underneath, and we can get them fairly short, and they're really slow growing, so they won't get up over the sign. But we've kind of, like you see here, we framed the City of Destin logo with these trees, and then framed the Marlin with these trees. And then on the base, we're proposing saw palmettos and some ornamental grasses, like some pink muhly grass or something like that. And then this wall to hold everything in and keep people from driving over all of it when they come out there. And I'll address the wall in just a minute. I had a little line in my speech. We will build this wall, and Fort Walton will pay for it. No, I'm just kidding. I said it anyway. I wasn't going to say it, but what the heck. This is our site plan. It's hard to read, but that has all the plant materials and locations. And then this is one of the things I'm going to ask of the city. I've already discussed this with our wonderful city manager, Lance. What a great guy. I mean, he has the word yes in his vocabulary, so I love it. Irrigation bags, the gator bags for the 8 trees. The city has a water buffalo irrigation truck. If we could send that out at least twice a week, and just for 6 months, not forever, just to get the trees and the roots established and the plants established, and then Mother Nature should take over after that. We control at least monthly. If it's done fairly regularly, it's very quick. Pull a few weeds out there and go. Trimming of the trees maybe once a year, and trimming of the grasses, ornamental grasses and palmettos one time a year. One thing we thought would be good, we are not lights on the coast, we're trees on the coast. So if the city wanted to maybe, we've looked into solar lighting. Really good ones with 5-year warranties are $100 and something a piece. We thought it would be really nice, since it's pitch black out there at night, to uplight the sign and the plants with some solar lighting. And then the last thing I wanted to ask for is a possible partnership with the city. That means skin in the game. Like I said a minute ago, we're not plants on the coast or walls on the coast or lighting on the coast. We're trees on the coast. We're a small nonprofit. We're not flush with money. Pretty much every penny we get goes straight back into buying trees and putting them in the ground. But we're committed to making this happen if we can get the permitting. I know we have to go through Eglin, but I feel like if we had the city behind us and the council, Parks and Rec unanimously supports this. We had a meeting last week that we think we should get this. I can't imagine why the Air Force would.
What's the cost estimate?
Oh, the cost estimate's between $15,000 and $20,000. So I was thinking, maybe split it with the city. We usually don't ask the government for anything because we pride ourselves on donating $200,000 worth of trees without asking the government. But this one, since it's not just a tree project, we don't mind asking for maybe help with the plants and the wall and the, pardon me?
TDC. You should ask the TDC as well.
Okay, we will. That's a great idea.
I mean,
okay.
I'm happy to consider it too, but.
Alan, would it help if you got a letter from the city of Destin saying that they would partner with you, so that as you go through this process with the DOD, it would allow you to have the legitimacy of saying, listen, city of Destin's behind us. I know you still are in the preliminary stages, so we don't have an affirmative yes or no from DOD, but that's ongoing, and if we can help with that.
That would be very helpful, I'm sure. That's why I was hoping that y'all would unanimously support this, so that we would have that backing at DOD. I did not find out tonight before the meeting that the wall and everything out there in our contract with DOD, it has to be able to come down quickly. So the wall would not be concreted in at all. It would be a puzzle piece. Literally, you could take a bulldozer out there and knock the sign and everything down in a half hour probably. But if that question were to come up, I'm answering it already. So I will go forward with reach out to TDC and see if they'll put some skin in the game. And if everybody says no to us, we're gonna still go forward as a nonprofit. We'll beg local businesses, and I think we might already have Luciano, the paver man, on board to do the pavers. So that's not for sure, but it's for sure. So we've already got one partner. And
Ms. Ramswell, you have a question?
Yeah, I love the idea. I'm totally on board. I did have one comment, and I know when I brought up I think it was a visioning session a few years ago. We talked about maybe lighting or doing something on the bridge, and it was brought to my attention that the Air Force is very sensitive about any lighting whatsoever, especially if it's pointing up. So that's something as simple as it sounds that we'll definitely need to ask them. I mean, you wouldn't think that that dull or dim of a light at ground level would be a big deal, but
Well, if it
apparently
is, I
sometimes
mean,
it can be.
the other thing, you know, you can see the Emerald Grand right there, so I don't,
It wouldn't be lit up any more than that, I wouldn't think.
and the other potential option, I mean, Emerald Grand's kind of light, but the other potential option, if that is an issue for uplighting, you could maybe do downlighting off the top of the sign. So, and
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks a lot for what you're doing. I think the city's really blessed to have individuals like yourself that volunteer their time, you know, to make our city, you know, beautiful. And you got my 100% support on this.
thank you very much for those comments.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think we need to do a lot more of it. Of this.
I agree.
This style. So, yeah, I'm behind you 100%. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Do y'all have to do like a motion and a
Yeah,
vote?
we're
and all
going to
this?
hear in just a second. I got a couple council members that want to speak here. Mr. Overdeer.
Well, that's kind of, once again, Alan French has brought a wonderful project to the city, and not only is he bringing it to us, but he's telling us how to do it, and he's going to partner with us and even give us some money for it. So, I mean, I think it's another terrific program on his part by him and his folks there at the Trees on the Coast. And I think the first thing we need to do, though, is we need to renegotiate the lease with Eglin, if I'm reading this right. So if you want me to, I mean, I'll make a motion for us to authorize staff to do that and proceed ahead with that. And then once we get the lease firmed up, I mean, we can go try to figure out where we're going to get the money, whether it's going to come from TDC or some of it's going to come from us, or, I mean, obviously you guys are willing to do some of it as well. So, I mean, if you want me, I'll move to ask city staff to renegotiate the Eglin lease for the Welcome to Destin sign to allow Trees on the Coast to beautify the sign.
I got a motion. I got a second. Mr. Marlar.
I just had one quick question on the palm trees. What's the depth that you'd have to bury those things for the root system to hold?
I would think about 3 feet, maybe.
Okay, because you're going to find probably layers and layers of shell and rock and everything else before you actually get to some place that might be able to take hold. So I want to do a core. If you get it to do the core sample, that probably would help you guys out.
Well, they'll be inside the wall, so there's probably about 18 inches of that. It's going to be backfilled with sand. I know we can't put dirt there, so it'll be sand. So we at least have. Hopefully, they'll get into that with the digger guys.
You're going to be digging a long, deep hole.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We have a motion. We have a second.
Could I ask a question before you vote on that? Does it need is there any, when you say renegotiate the lease, isn't it just, there's rules in the lease and you just ask, or does it need to be renegotiated?
We would just need to amend the current lease to include the land.
Oh, to include the land, okay. I'm not in the government, so I don't know these things, sorry.
We operate different than normal people. So we have a motion, we have a second. See no further comment? Nope. Here we go. Go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
Could I add to that motion to have you provide Mr. French or the Air Force with a letter stating you have unanimous council supporting the project?
Got a friendly amendment to the motion?
That's
You're good?
fine.
You're good with it? How about the second? Second? So the motion is now that we're going to renegotiate our contract with the DOD and include with that a letter from the mayor of the city of Destin saying that the Destin City Council is behind this project 100%. That looks good. Let's go ahead and vote. Of course,
Y'all are just awesome.
it's unanimous. So moved. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it,
Okay,
sir.
thank you.
All right, we're going to press on to the next portion of our meeting, and after the public comment period, I think we'll take a quick break, and then we'll move forward. So right now is public comment. for anything on the agenda, public comment for agenda items that are not public hearings and any other matter not on the agenda. These are all cards from last meeting. I don't have any cards, but at this time I'll look out in the audience if anyone has any issues or items that they would like to talk about. Mr. French, state your name and your address again for the public record.
I'm Alan French, 50 Lands End Drive. We recently did that project on Airport Road, and the city put in the irises. And I've already brought this up to Lance's attention, but I just wanted you all to know, apparently the landscape company that maintains that median was weed spraying, and the wind must have done it on a windy day, because if you go out there, there's a ton of irises that are brown and dead. And I just think the city should hold the landscapers' feet to the fire to replace them. That's just my opinion. Anyway, that's me as a citizen. And if you get a chance, go out to Gulf Shore Drive. We just, in partnership with Holiday Isle, we did 44 new trees, so it's impressive out there. Anyway, that's all I have.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else would like to come up to the podium? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close this portion of the meeting, and we'll take a real quick 5-minute break.